4 rings for 4 knights under the sun. 4 stories bound to one lord. These are not mere trinkets, and you can wear each of them to great effect, but their true value lies in the history they carry. Because rings reveal Ornstein's identity, they speak of Ciaran's true love, and they tell us which of Gwyn's mightiest knights was the most powerful. The Four Knights of Gwyn were not born into greatness, they forged it. Each one carved their own legend, rising through the ranks of Gwyn's forces through sheer skill, loyalty, and feats that shaped the age. Only after proving themselves beyond doubt were they named as the Lord's personal knights, the greatest of his champions. And only then, long after their names carried weight, were their rings forged. These rings are more than decorations, they are marks of identity, designed as a set, yet unmistakably shaped by the warriors who wore them. Each one reflects its knight's fighting style, their nature, and even the fate that awaited them. Such masterful craftsmanship, made in Gwyn's name, could only have been the work of the nameless blacksmith deity, the divine smith behind much of the gods' weaponry, armour, and even their great halls. The bands of these 4 rings share a striking resemblance to those crafted for Gwyn's own children, which the deity was surely responsible for: the Ring of the Sun's Firstborn, the Ring of the Sun Princess, and even the Dark Moon Blade Covenant Ring. Each of these rings is a masterpiece, its power woven seamlessly into the identity of the wearer, exemplifying the understanding and skill of the blacksmith. And for the 4 knights, that identity took an unusual form, because, curiously, their rings did not bear symbols of men or gods, but of beasts. The Wolf Ring. The Wolf Ring is likely the first of the set a player will come across. It's easy to spot shortly after entering Darkroot Garden, perched on the edge of a path just out of reach. But getting to it is another story. I'd wager there are some veterans even today who don't know about the little path to reach it. If you head towards the Moonlight Butterfly and turn right once you reach the open area, there is a small path blocked by one of the most unassuming enemies in the entire game. A simple tree. There are only 2 of these trees in the game, and beyond their decent health pool and a rare swinging vine attack, their true skill lies in blending into the forest. Beyond this hidden passage, a handful of frog rays roam, great for farming green blossoms. And further ahead, a tunnel with stone steps leading upwards. There, watched over by a stone guardian, the Wolf Ring rests upon a forgotten corpse. Wearing the ring grants you 40 poise, a substantial buff in the game where poise is king. For medium and light armor sets, and for early builds in general, it's invaluable, preventing the wearer from being stunned by every tiny attack. Unlike the other rings in the set, this is a one-size-fits-all. There are some builds that can make better use of it, but there's rarely a moment it won't come in handy. And that, fittingly, reflects its owner well: Knight Artorias. Artorias was an unparalleled master of the greatsword. With an indomitable will, he displayed through his azure blue tassel armor, a symbol of pride and glory. A ring that enhances poise is a perfect match for his unwavering nature. But why the wolf? Did Artorias always model his armor and fighting style after a wolf's wild, relentless nature? Or was this symbolism recognized only after he had carved his legend? One thing is certain, it is not because of his later bond with Sif, which came many years after the ring's creation. Sif is far smaller in the DLC than in the present day, which is confirmed to have taken place about 200 to 300 years in the past. Sif was only a young pup even then, but Gwyn left to rekindle the first flame over 1,000 years ago, not to mention these rings were likely created long before that dire period, and instead were surely bestowed during the height of Anor Londo's history, well before it was deserted. So the wolf symbolism, as far as we can tell, is tied directly to Artorias himself. It may reflect his fighting style, but more likely, it speaks to his nature. Artorias is unique among the 4 knights. The others had clear roles within Gwyn's army, serving as commanders of specific legions, the Dragon Slayers, the Great Archers, or Gwyn's elite assassins, all of which we'll look at in due course. But Artorias? His place in the hierarchy is far less defined. There's no direct mention of whom he led. That's not to say he wasn't a commander, and I'm sure he was a real hero against the dragons, but his legacy doesn't seem to rest on leadership. It rests on his character. What people remember is his unbending will, his unwavering, steel-like resolve, an image so powerful that even in the time of Dark Souls 3 it still endures. Fittingly, this aligns with the function of poise, steadfast and immovable. But this is where the character of Artorias comes into question. Is unyielding resolve truly the defining trait of a great commander? If he were a ruler, such a quality would be invaluable. But as a leader of warriors? If you were Gwyn, choosing between two mighty knights to command your forces, would you favour the one with an unbreakable will who refuses to bend, or one with adaptability to lead? It's a choice that speaks volumes. Dark Souls 2 doesn't feature the Wolf Ring, but there is a ring which serves the same purpose, the Ring of Giants. As expected, its origins lie with the legendary giants, and its strongest versions are found on 2 elite giants in the Black Gulch, or dropped by the Giant Lord himself. But its description introduces another curiosity about Artorias, that this ring was once beloved by a warrior named Shieldless Lothian, so named because he chose to fight without a shield. Like Artorias, Lothian was steadfast and determined, but the difference in their approach is telling. Lothian deliberately fought unshielded, relying entirely on poise, while Artorias wielded a great shield, at least before his fall to the abyss. This distinction is important. A ring that boosts poise is only useful if you take hits directly. A shielded fighter relies on the shield's stability, not poise. Finally, Artorias is remembered not for his time under Gwyn, but for his heroism in saving Olympus and fighting off the Abyss, a legend which the DLC revealed to be only half the story, and instead his honour was preserved by you, an unsung hero, who succeeded where he did not. All of this is to say that the wolf quality of Artorias is clearly a reflection of his character more than anything else. It fits perfectly, the loyalty of wolves and their pack mentality, even in the harshest of conditions, their strength and ferocity. There is also the lone wolf archetype, which reflects the knight who fought back the Dark Wraiths and the Abyss alone, or maybe with Sif for a time. Artorias was stubborn, and perhaps it was fate that he would take on the Abyss alone. If you think about it, this was his weakness, a power that couldn't be overcome through poise or an unbending will, and required more proactivity. Yet Artorias took on this impossible task not out of recklessness, but out of kindness and nobility. He fought alone to protect those around him. Perhaps this is why his role as commander has faded from history, but it's also clear why Gwyn would choose such a stout-hearted warrior to be one of his 4 knights. He may have been a lone wolf, but only in his work. He forged bonds so strong that Gough calls him an old friend. His companion Sif makes it their life mission to protect his legacy. Even centuries later, Sif recognises the one who gave Artorias an honourable end. But most of all is the effect he had on another of the 4 knights. But before we look at her ring, there's one last mystery to solve. Have you ever wondered why the ring of Artorias himself is found in such a lackluster place? The corpse that holds it is unremarkable, and the location holds no clear importance even in Olympus in the past. Well, Ciaran has some cut dialogue that would have once explained it.
Human, why have you the ring of Artorias? That ring, it was purloined by a man in a long coat. I know not how you came upon it, but its owner met his death here. He was a dear companion, and I wish to return the ring to his grave. Would you be willing to part with it?
It seems that the ring was stolen by Marvellous Chester himself. Ciaran never caught him, else she would have reclaimed the ring, but trapped in the past and unable to return to the present, Chester eventually met an unremarkable end, leaving the wolf ring here. The Hornet Ring. This ring belonged to the Lord's Blade Ciaran, or Ciaran, which, as it turns out, is how her name is pronounced according to cut content.
I am Ciaran.
I must be wary of Ciaran.
There's always more to learn with this game. The Hornet Ring boosts critical attacks, i.e. backstabs and ripostes, by a whopping 30%, and as a neat touch, landing a critical attack on humanoid enemies triggers unique animations lifted straight from Demon Souls. In PvE, the ring is situational but incredibly powerful. Not every enemy in Dark Souls can be critically struck, but many of the toughest ones can, and this ring makes them far more manageable. Black or Silver Knights, this armoured boar, Havel, infested barbarians, you get the picture. Even Gwyn himself can be utterly dismantled by a well-timed parry, which is why speedrunners often use this ring to finish their runs. But where the Hornet Ring truly shines is PvP. The style points, the sheer lethality. Anyone who spent time invading or dueling knows exactly how dangerous this ring is. For skilled players, a single parry often means an instant kill, and the best of them can swap weapons and even rings in the blink of an eye before delivering the riposte. It's downright impressive, even when you're the one getting deleted. All of this perfectly encapsulates the role of the Lord's Blade. By boosting critical attacks, its wearer can annihilate foes, as Ciaran's dagger laid waste to Lord Gwyn's enemies. Not only was she the only woman among the Four Knights, but her entire order, the Lord's Blades, was solely made up of women. These deadly women shift nimbly between layers of darkness, etching streaks of gold into the night air, and planting visions of terror into the minds of their targets. Their role wasn't honourable duels or open warfare, but tactical, precise eliminations, likely to maintain Gwyn's rule, even during times of peace. The ring's function fits this perfectly, and in PvP it certainly instilled the same terror in me whenever I knew an invader was wearing it. A Hornet is the perfect emblem for these qualities. Its power lies in precision and lethality, in elusiveness and deception. But beyond that, this small detail helps flesh out the world of Dark Souls. It hints at the unseen, at the wildlife that FromSoft couldn't depict directly at the time. Bugs, flowers, an entire ecosystem beyond the warped forms of demons or the hulking presence of armoured boars. Ciaran's dialogue makes one thing clear. Despite her small stature, she is not human. She likely shares the same divine lineage as the Lords of Anor Londo. But beyond that, her words betray a deep contempt for humanity.
Are you human? I forgive you. You humans, always taking what you please.
It makes you wonder, who exactly was she sent to assassinate? Dark Souls 3 made it clear just how much Gwyn manipulated humanity, so it would make perfect sense that Ciaran could have been tasked to eliminate humans in particular, who threatened to break free of their control. After all, Gwyn saw humans as enemies, even while maintaining the illusion of peace. That's to say, outright warfare wasn't useful here, and only assassins would do the trick. The Hornet Ring is usually the second of the Four Knights rings that a player finds in Lordran. It's located on a female corpse curled up behind the grave of Artorias, but this is not actually where Artorias fell, it's where the Ulysseal Sanctuary once stood. Sif, of course, still guards the grave to this day, but in case you didn't know, you can actually loot the ring without triggering the fight. The cutscene only activates when you approach the grave from the front, so if you just give that area a wide berth, you can safely loot the ring as early as you like. After the emotion Ciaran displays in the DLC at Artorias' death, after the fact that she retires her weapons if you hand over the Knight's Soul, it's safe to assume that this corpse is Ciaran herself, who slowly faded away after losing everything she cared about. And if there was any doubt, Gough has some cut dialogue that confirms the truth of her feelings.
If thine was the blade to which Artorias fell, then thou must be wary of Ciaran. She had strong feelings for the great Artorias, the poor girl.
Clearly, this was not public knowledge, and by the way Gough phrases it, it seems her emotions were one-sided, either unspoken or unreturned. The lone wolf likely made sure of that. The poor girl, indeed. The Leo Ring. The Leo Ring boosts counter damage for thrusting attacks by 40%, which in addition to the standard counter damage bonus amounts to a massive 67% damage increase. This applies to any thrust attack, whether from a spear, a thrusting sword, or even specific attacks like the Baldur Sidesword's strong attack. Surprisingly, some halberd attacks that appear to be slashes also qualify, however, critical attacks do not. Understanding how the Leo Ring works is by far the biggest hurdle to unlocking its potential. My bet is most players who picked it up were confused how to use it, and even if they experimented with it, they would have quickly dropped it for other, more intuitive rings. However, just like the others in the set, this ring is insanely powerful. You just need to know how to use it. Counterattacks in Dark Souls occur when you strike an enemy while they're still in the active frames of an attack, specifically, i.e. it doesn't apply when they're staggered. For a game as methodical and punishing as Dark Souls, this takes some time to get used to, attacking just as your enemy commits to their own strike. You need to manage your positioning, or be aware enough to know that you'll stagger the enemy with your strike. Importantly, bosses are particularly susceptible to this ring. Their attacks tend to have long wind-ups and animations, so if you're good, you can get multiple counter hits in at once. One of my favourite weapons for the Leo Ring is the Lucerne. Since all its attacks count as thrusts, it lets you melt bosses, and that's before stacking with Power Within, the Red Tearstone Ring, and so on. For PvE, with the right build, the Leo Ring is just amazing. For PvP, sadly it's pretty hard to use, but I'm sure some of you have made good use of it there too. The fact that the Leo Ring excels against larger foes makes it a fitting relic for its owner, Ornstein the Dragon Slayer, whose spear is said to have sliced a boulder in two. The lion motif reflects his ferocity and raw strength, and like Artorias, he also chose to style his armour after his spirit animal. Pair this strength with the lightning imbued within his weapon, and it's no wonder he gained legendary status from the war against the ancient dragons. His feats here outshone everything he's done since, unlike the previous two knights, and even to Dark Souls 3, this is what he's remembered for. Interestingly, the Leo Ring's description in Dark Souls 3 reveals an overlooked piece of history. Ornstein was the first knight of the sun's eldest born, and his crossspear is said to have pierced scales made of stone. This suggests Ornstein originally served the firstborn son before joining Gwyn's Four Knights. Given that Gwyn was the ruler of the age, it's unlikely to have been the other way around. Indeed, it's clear Ornstein continued to serve as one of the Four Knights in the time since Gwyn's departure. This is shown by his soul and his station in Anor Londo alongside Smough. They have statues that indicate they've worked together for some time, and we know that Smough wished to be one of the Four Knights too, while having little to tie him to the firstborn son. The big question surrounding Ornstein in Dark Souls 1 arose after the release of Dark Souls 3, where you can find his armour set at Archdragon Peak, after defeating Gwyn's firstborn son, the Nameless King. Its description reads, "In the Dragonless Age, this knight who long guarded the ruined cathedral, left the land in search of the Nameless King." Furthermore, the Leo Ring is found in Irithyll, which lies beneath Anor Londo, in a chest alongside two others that hold a divine blessing and Smough's great hammer. Smough's armour set is only available after defeating Aldritch, who has also eaten Gwyndolin, and says that Smough was the last knight that stood to defend the Anor Londo cathedral. Together, the picture being painted is that Ornstein eventually became disillusioned guarding Anor Londo for Gwyn, a lord who would never return. So he abandoned his post to search for his previous commander, the Nameless King, and clearly he found him, since his set is found in the same location as the boss encounter. But more than that, he may have even transcended into dragonhood in some capacity, because this set is one of the few instances of loot in the game that isn't found on a corpse or in a chest, and instead simply floats in the air, as though it was left behind. All this has led many to question whether the Ornstein fought in Dark Souls 1 is the real thing. Perhaps he's a golem, an animated creature empowered by soul, like the Iron Golem in Sen's Fortress. This theory also aligns with Smough's unsettling reaction in the boss fight. If Ornstein falls first, Smough gleefully crushes his still-moving body, as if there's no real concern for a fallen comrade. Perhaps he's an illusion of Gwyndolin's. However, the Leo Ring presents a different possibility, namely in Dark Souls 2, where the old Leo Ring is described as the beloved ring of a dragon-slaying knight. After years of use, the ring's face has worn down, but close inspections reveal an engraved lion. Now, wearing the Leo Ring doesn't prove that this fight is Ornstein himself. After all, his armour set is curiously absent from Dark Souls 2, even after defeating him. However, the Leo Ring is a smithing marvel, custom made for Gwyn's Four Knights, and one of a kind, especially given the disappearance of the nameless blacksmith deity. This means that the knight referenced in the ring's description must be Ornstein himself. That's to say, Ornstein loved this ring. In truth, I feel as though the story of Ornstein in Dark Souls 1 didn't have Ornstein leaving his post in mind, and that this was something that was added in the later game. But given the insight Dark Souls 2 has provided, it is clear that Ornstein wouldn't have left his beloved ring for some apparition or golem to take care of, at the risk of it being taken by a random challenger. Furthermore, this apparition still drops Ornstein's soul if you defeat him second, and Smough doesn't absorb it himself. Not to mention that Dark Souls 3 describes the cathedral as ruined by the time Ornstein leaves, which certainly isn't the case in the first game yet. So much still seems to say that this is actually Ornstein. So, which is it? Did Ornstein truly leave, meaning this version is an imposter? Or is this actually him, and Dark Souls 3 changed the lore? Well, perhaps both can be right. Let's look at his partner Smough as a case study. Everyone agrees this must be the real Smough, since he never left his post in Anor Londo and is implied to have been, in an ironic twist, cannibalized by Aldritch before Dark Souls 3. However, how can Smough later be eaten by Aldritch if we, the chosen undead, kill him in Dark Souls 1? In fact, what about Gwyndolin? How is he gradually devoured by Aldritch if he too can be killed in the first game? This sort of issue is actually the case for a lot of the events of Dark Souls. The game thrives on uncertainty, and not everything the player does is canon. Each chosen undead follows a different path, and what we experience is just one version of history. So, in the canon timeline of Dark Souls 3, the chosen undead didn't reach the cathedral before Ornstein left. Instead, he stored his ring in a chest for safekeeping by his home city, before he went on a journey he knew he would never return from. But in our story in Dark Souls 1, this is the real Ornstein, wearing his beloved ring, still standing firm in his duty, and acting with honour despite the brutality of his partner, whose actions are still neatly explained by a dive into his character. A knight of such strength, honour and presence that he is now believed to be the captain of the Four Knights, a testament to his standing even at the pinnacle of society. And yet, he is only believed to be, because the true captain of the Four Knights was surely the strongest of them all, the one who was granted the final ring of the set. The Hawk Ring. The final ring of the set is humble in nature, hidden in an easy to miss location. You can find this one in a chest, nestled in the corner behind the giant blacksmith in Anor Londo. In Dark Souls 2, the ring is found in a pit within the Forest of Fallen Giants, and in Dark Souls 3, it's dropped by a giant archer. Clearly, the giants held a natural aptitude for archery, and no one embodied this better than Gough himself. Mechanically, the ring serves to boost the range of bows and crossbows by 50%, as well as to increase the zoom distance while aiming, or using binoculars. Now, I think most would agree that this is the least useful of all the rings in the set. Bows are notoriously weak in Dark Souls 1, and truly distanced combat is often impractical, right? Well, once again, this ring is actually pretty useful if you use it right. This is because of two mechanics in the game. The first is how damage fall off is calculated. By increasing your range, you also decrease the fall off damage, ultimately adding a small damage boost in many cases. The second is how enemies are programmed. Namely that if you hit them from far enough away, they struggle to aggro at all. Pair this with the Slumbering Dragon Crest Ring or the Ring of Fog, and suddenly you can turn the environment against the game itself. You can even cheese Manus if you're patient enough. But probably the coolest way to use this ring is to fight Kalameet yourself, as in without Gough's help. It takes time, patience, and a steady hand, but it is possible, and if you succeed, Gough himself will acknowledge it, offering one of the rarest dialogues in the game.
I see that thou hast dusted the great black dragon Kalameet, wondrously played. Lord Gwyn's blessing upon thee. I see that there is at least one legend among ye humans. Dear me, that old bat will never fly again.
From one legendary marksman to another, Gough's respect is the real reward. Despite all this, the ring does differ in a key way to the others. As per the description, the ring boosts bow range so that arrows fly like they were shot by Gough's great bow, which took down high-flying dragons. Unlike the others, this ring is not a flat boost in power for Gough. Instead, it aids the user to shoot as if they were Gough. It's the only ring whose associated knight isn't helped by wearing it. That also goes for the animal association of a hawk, though it is a common pairing to skilled archers across media. Gough himself bears little thematic ties to a hawk. What it does emphasize is Gough's skill, rather than his strength. Both his insight, to see through the world for what is true and important, but also for his martial skill. Shooting an arrow further is of course related to strength, but the benefit of his ring is more akin to sharing his skill rather than his power. And boy is he skillful. Gough does not have the ring in the DLC, and from the ring's description in Dark Souls 3, his blindness is confirmed to be a recent hindrance due to the resin packed into the holes in his helm. And yet, even after losing his sight, and without his ring, he is able to take down the mighty ancient dragon Calamite in a single shot. It's got to be one of the most badass moments in the franchise. So if Gough didn't need the ring here, and its benefit didn't apply to him, then it stands to reason that its purpose was actually for others to use. Just like the ring describes, the ring helps others to be able to shoot as well as Gough. The Hawk Ring is the epitome of Gough's nature, one whose skill and wisdom far surpasses many around him, but who seeks to share and teach rather than take for himself. Indeed, it's clear that Gough's prowess exceeds even the rest of the Four Knights. Gough is the only one who was honoured by Gwyn beyond being one of the Four Knights, through the adornments of his armour. The medallion, bequeathed by the Lord himself, and the dragonbone pauldrons are symbols of the highest honours. We also know from the ring that Gough led the Great Archers, and from his bow, he was also the leader of the famed Dragon Slayers. That's right, not Ornstein, nor the firstborn son, but Gough. What reason could there be for a giant, whose kind were given little respect by the general populace, to be stationed above both of them, unless he was clearly, far and away, the most powerful of all? I'd believe it. The one who can sit carving wood all day, and take a break to fell an ancient dragon while being blind, and all the while forming deep relationships with others full of respect and humility.
I would have much to talk about with that blacksmith. In truth, how is the old chap, I wonder? Still hammering away, I should hope.
Perhaps this is why the ring is found safely in a chest in the present day. Gough might have gifted the ring to the giant blacksmith, perhaps to aid whoever comes along that might make good use of it. Ciaran as an assassin is unlikely to have led the Four Knights, and the character of Artorias also makes him an unfitting candidate. Ornstein may have ended up serving as the captain of the group once the others had either passed away or retired, as shown by him holding the soul granted for all four of them. But in the prime of the Age of Fire, Gough was in all likelihood the captain of the Great Archers, the Dragon Slayers, and even the Four Knights. He was the most powerful, but more than that, his true strength lay in his wisdom and his ability to empower others. The Four Knights of Gwyn were each legends in their own right, and now as their legacy falls out of memory, their unique rings are all that continue to survive. But they are not small, they're monumental, telling stories from before the Age of Fire even began.
We knights fought valiantly, but for every one of them, we lost 70 of our own. Exhilaration, pride, hatred, rage. The dragons teased out our dearest emotions, thou will understand one day.
Which is your favourite ring, or knight? If you made it this far, consider supporting the channel and get early access to upcoming releases, feature your own theories on the channel, or even get access to new Lore Before Bed videos ad-free for less than $1. Your support makes content like this possible, so thank you.